All right. So, Austin, happy to be talking to you. I guess to
Likewise.
start, I just wondered if you could run through kind of what led you to unstructured and working in the AI space generally.
Ooh, that's a good question. My job prior to this was at a startup out in the Boston area. And I think just it was total serendipity. I got pinged from the recruiter at the right time. I was looking to move on. I had some of the right stack we were looking for, and I always uh, uh, my mind is always a bit blown that at the time Unstructured was maybe half a year into this, and they were sending around their pitch deck for investors for candidates, and it was all about pre-processing data for ML engineers who wanted make this easier. And it really was the month I joined that the large language model stuff just exploded, and that immediately became the core of what we do, and it's been a wild ride since. So I
Yeah.
just passed the 1 year mark.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess for people who are less familiar with the space, can you explain like what is the role that pre-processing plays in the overall AI ecosystem and kind of what makes unstructured so important?
Yeah, totally. So unstructured has one very simple goal, which is to extract natural language data from ideally any file type that you could throw at us. Organizations have all this information in Word documents and PDFs. We could go as far as images and audio files, right? And uh, the whole point of unstructured is that you send that file, you get back the natural language, the narrative text in that file in the structure of the document with the metadata that points to how these things relate to each other. Um, and these days we really have become a preferred way to uh, pass this data on to our large language model, because absolutely everyone wants to ask questions of their organization's data, right? And the really cool thing about that is the LLMs don't care so much about the OCR being 100%. You can have a few characters off, as long as the narrative, you know, semantic meaning is there. You get back this JSON, you pass it on to the model, and then you can, you're talking to your data, right? Which is just insanely cool.
Yeah, very cool. So it's kind of like unstructured is the bridge that lets the large language models access like the wealth of information that you have stored in various formats.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we literally are sitting at the top of this new stack within the last few years, right? And step one is getting that information out of your data. So we've really enjoyed becoming this sort of funnel at the top, right? That everyone
Mhm.
wants to get into.
Cool. And can you just kind of restate your role within unstructured and kind of what you're responsible for?
Totally. So I am an engineer on the core infra team over here. We have a few different engineering teams that are all have deliverables that we sort of pass from one to the next. And core infra has really been responsible for maintaining our API. We have a freemium and a paid API that are both uh, very simple wrappers around the functionality of our open source library. So there's a lot of infrastructure as code and Kubernetes involved in that. Um, and for my part, I'm also sort of looking at the API itself and its parameters, and making sure that's all maintained. And furthermore, looking at the user experience downstream, which brings me to you guys. So the clients have been a huge part of my focus recently.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the developer experience aspect. I guess starting at kind of like the lowest level though, maybe you could describe what does the unstructured API stack look like? How are you guys building your API?
Totally. Yeah, so as I mentioned, the meat of this really is our open source library. Um, right, the fact that we will accept any file type and just return you this JSON means that there is a whole host of dependencies and various parameters. Right, so the complexity of all this, the plumbing really is in the library. The API was our answer to people having to go in and manage all those dependencies in order to use the library. Um, so uh, so our API really is just a fast API wrapper that calls the library, and it is just a single endpoint. It accepts a file, as well
Hmm.
as any of the parameters that you could send to the partition functionality is what we call it, the send file get JSON. Um, right, and in that sense, our stack is very simple. It's just a fast API, 100 lines of wrapper sitting
Hmm.
in Amazon ECS, uh, or in some cases in Kubernetes, in Azure. Right, we have various deployments.
Yeah. I guess for the people who aren't familiar with Fast API, could you quickly just describe kind of what value you get from using Fast API to build your API? All
Yeah,
one endpoint
uh,
of it?
that's a good question. So Fast API is really cool in that it's built around Python's async IO. Frankly, that hasn't become so relevant for us here. It really is sort of just the framework we chose. I think it's something we do benefit from that. Well, we will benefit from going forward. We haven't gotten too far along. Is the schema validation. Right, Fast API uses the Pydantic library to define the structure of your request and your response, and everything just works out of the box, right? Um, but as I said, frankly, it's been really just you know an API pass through for us, and there's certainly a lot more we could be taking advantage of.
Yeah. Well, actually, maybe that's a good bridge because, touching on type safety kind of
Mhm.
naturally goes into the client space. So you mentioned before, like your team's responsible for the end user API experience. I guess could you kind of quickly talk about how your team defines a quality developer experience? Like, what are some
Oh,
of the
totally.
goals or signs of that?
Yeah, I was giving this some thought, and I think for us it really is uh about removing friction, right? As I said, our really our path from this massive library with all its dependencies to first wrapping that in a Docker image and then deploying that as an API. It was all in the name of simplicity, right, and reducing the friction of installing all those packages. Uh, and our ideal state, as I said, is you pass this a file, you get the JSON. Um, right. So I think everything we look at in terms of developer experience is really about reducing friction, whether that's amazing documentation that is it's very story driven. It's you come here, you pass in your key and your file, and then you do this with the results. Um, right. Another piece of that for us is around error handling. As you can imagine, we're accepting any file you could think of. So there's certainly a long tail of one-off a PDF that's been created in such and such a way that uh, we'd like to handle all those cases, but when we can't, we want the error experience to be as smooth as possible, right?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I often feel like with a developer product, it's almost more important how you fail versus how you succeed because there's just a lot of failures on the step to
Oh, totally. I
success
like that.
typically. Yeah. Cool. And I guess not to, beat a dead horse, but maybe how do the clients specifically fit into developer experience?
Yeah, I think like we were saying, the fail case was really one of the biggest things we were looking at when uh what it's been uh months since we started working with you guys, right? But at the time, the retry handling was huge for us. We know there are going to be ephemeral errors in the info we're standing up, as opposed to a corrupt file that you just want to know is bad immediately, and being able to differentiate that and just have sane handling and retries out of the box was huge for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Uh, cool. And then just going into, I guess, the reception of the unstructured SDKs, I'm curious for people who are using the API, do you have a sense of what percent choose to use a client versus integrate directly?
Yeah, that's an excellent question that I'd love to have a better sense of. I
Yeah.
know uh obviously you guys do set the user agents
Mm.
when it's being passed along. It's been on my to-do list to take advantage of that and in our metrics be able to track that because I would love to know for our purposes, right?
Yeah.
Um I can say uh, in January of this year is when we released our first paid version of the API. So
Yep.
it once again is just that one endpoint, but we have a few nicer nicer models and it's a bit more performance. And when we did this, we made the choice to in the onboarding docs for that put you guys front and center. So our ecosystem really has been Python. So in the email that went out, we said, just de facto, here's how you use the API, and we had a snippet of the Python client. So in that sense,
Yep.
uh, at this point, we now have about 1,000 paying users, and I would
Wow.
expect that a good majority of them are just going through Speakeasy because that's what we told them to do, right?
Yeah. Wow, you guys are really accelerating, like drinking from the fire hose. 1,000 users after
It's
going
been a
live in
lot.
January is crazy. That's
Actually,
crazy.
while I'm throwing out numbers, I did write this one down as well because it never sounds real to me. But I do want to say we have metrics on how often our open source library is downloaded and used. And overall, since I want to say maybe the summer of 22 is when this thing really started, right? We've been downloaded 6.4 million times. And we have numbers on 27,000 distinct organizations using us, and that's just open source.
Jesus.
So,
That's
uh,
staggering.
as I said, everyone wants to chat with their data, right? And it's been a wild year to say the least.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just a personal anecdote here, but I've found that I've recently started using AI in my daily work, and I've
Mhm.
found it's incredible at like I record a lot of meetings that I have, and then I'll feed the transcript into the AI, and then I'll kind of use that to have like a back and forth conversation to kind of brainstorm ideas for content and stuff like that. And it's been tremendously useful, which is
Yeah.
actually kind of exactly the kind of thing that you guys are powering.
Yeah, it's definitely a new and exciting world, I would say. I also, have had a lot of luck using various models to, uh, you know, spit out a script that would have taken me 10 minutes of just having to look up. It's not worth remembering this command and this command, right? Uh,
Yep.
and yeah, to be enabling stuff like this at such a fundamental level has been really exciting.
Very cool. Okay, just quickly going back to SDKs, I had one more question I wanted to ask.
Mhm.
Did you guys ever consider building your libraries by hand? or like using an open source generator? I guess really what I'm asking is kind of what made you feel like Speakeasy was the best solution or the right choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't know the full history of how we first got in touch with you guys, but by the time I had come into this, uh it was sort of a given that this is how we were moving forward, and hey, go play with this generate button, and I did, and it worked. Um as I said before, having that retry logic out of the box was really front and center at our for our decision. I think obviously we could write a relatively simple client that just does that, right? I think the second really big piece of this was maintaining parameter parity. Um, right. So as a consequence of having just the one endpoint, the complexity and the new features are really added, as parameters, as we build this thing up. And I think that if anything was the driving force is we wanted to point you guys to our spec and just set it and forget it, right? Our API has continues to grow as features make it into the library, and then we have to put those in the API, and to be able to do that all and have a TypeScript and a Python client that are just up to date has been amazing.
Very cool. Yeah, we definitely hear that a lot. Set it and forget it is kind of the key. One less
Mhm.
thing that you need to have burdening your mind. Uh, cool. Well, I think last thing I would just ask is because you're working in the AI space, I am curious, like, do you have any just hot takes on what's coming? Like, where's everything going?
Oh, you know what? I feel like there's so much in the broader space that I would love to have more context on. I say a lot. I'm just here to write code. There are certainly others on the team who are more well versed in the LLMs themselves. Um, but I mean, it's just all very exciting. For me, it's from the user perspective of what these models can do and how they can enhance what I'm doing day to day, right? Um, I would say, on unstructured side, what I'm super excited to see is we're just getting into a beta release of our platform product, which we plan to have as our flagship product, even more so than this endpoint that everyone uses. And our tagline on our website is ETL for LLMs, and this is really what's going to enable that. We have this product that's going to sit in your cloud or where your data is. You point it to an incoming stream of files, right? Just an S3 bucket that has all your company's information,
Yep.
and an outgoing stream, and on the other side you're just going to have structured JSON that then goes to a vector database, goes to wherever you need it uh to have a semantic chat with your data, right? Which is just going to be so cool.
No, that's a great use case. I can't wait to help you guys build a Terraform provider to power your ETL use case.
Absolutely. I was telling Segar the other day that you guys are a huge piece of this, right? Given that you are really the front end of our first paid product, and I just can't wait to see what happens next.
Cool. I mean, likewise, definitely excited to see how you guys grow. I think that's one of my personal favorite parts of working at Speakeasy is just getting exposure to all these cool companies and
That
getting to
does
learn
sound really
about what
cool.
you guys are building. Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm gonna pause the recording.
Excellent.